tools. 6,000 to 7,000 ways to decide how we can communicate with our customers. Let's be positive about this. We're lucky. We have all of these options. Let's be positive. We are lucky. So, as with this lucky, how do we choose which of these tools to use? You have to make sure you have strategic direction. There are 5 questions essentially that you need the answers to before you can make an informed decision about which marketing communication tools to use. Now, it might be that you're in a position to set this strategic direction. It might be you're a marketing director, a business owner. If you're in the position to set that direction, then do so. Don't just keep it in your head. Actually, do take the time to sit down, to answer these questions, to work through it all. It will make choosing your marketing communication tools that much easier. Now, for many of us, we might not be in that position to set the strategic direction, to provide the answers for these questions. You probably have senior managers, marketing directors that you report into, in which case you have to get these answers. And if they won't give you this strategic guidance, then make them aware that your marketing communications plan and the tools you use might not be as effective as possible. So let's run through the 5 key areas that you need to have answers to. 1, what are the goals of this campaign plan? 2, which tools are your target customer segments using? 3, which messages do you have to convey? 4, what is the resource available for your plan? And 5, what is the desired brand positioning? So, the first one, what are the goals of this campaign and plan? You might have seen this model before. It's been turned into a sales funnel, a marketing funnel, a business development funnel. It's based on a 1959 model, IDA, Awareness, Interest, Desire, Action, in the top left corner, by Philip Kotler. And what Kotler did was he mapped out the broad stages that we all go through when we make a purchase decision. In other words, the buyer's journey. And he looked at it from the buyer's point of view, which is what you have to do as well. Today, I'm using the version of the buyer's journey that Bryony Thomas developed in 2013. It has more steps than Kotler's model, and I think it's more relevant to marketing today. So what Kotler and Thomas both realised is that whenever people are buying, even if it's something that's free but requires their time, so that might be the case if you're in the voluntary sector, you need people to volunteer, everybody goes through these stages in sequence. They have to become aware that your product or service exists. That's step 1. It has to be step 1. Step 2, they need to show an interest in it. Step 3, they've got to figure out if that's what they want to do. Evaluation. Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to buy? Is this going to meet my needs? Then they will do some sort of a trial. And that might be engaging literally in a free trial. It might be purchasing a small amount from you, or let's take the voluntary organisation again. It might be donating 1 hour of time to build up to several more. Once they've done that, then they adopt your product, your service. That's when they become a customer. But it doesn't stop there. We all know that what we really, really want and need is loyal customers, people that are going to come back to our organisations again and again and again. And for some of us, we might not have products or services that we can sell to them again and again and again. So what we want from those people are referrals. Why is this important? What has this got to do with what are the goals of this campaign or plan? What it is when you are asked to deliver a marketing campaign, you have to know at which point of the buyer's journey you are trying to communicate with your buyers. Because at different stages of their journey to make a purchase from you, they will have different needs. And they will also be using different communication tools. So you have to communicate with them in the most relevant way. Let's have a look at a few examples. For example, if you are given an awareness goal, 15% of our segment have to know we exist, and in randomised market research, they have to be able to state what we do. You're reaching them at the awareness level. You might be given an interest goal. You have to go away and generate 50 downloads per month of our white paper. So they've already found out about you, and now you've got this goal. Evaluation. We want 10 of our case studies, which people are using to decide if we're the right company for them to bring in, to be read per week. Maybe a trial goal. We want 250 companies per quarter to take our 1 month free trial. Or it could be adoption. We want a sales increase of 10%. Or a loyalty. We want you to increase returning client spend by 10%. First of all, identify the goals that you have been given and where they sit on the buying process. And then you have to think, who's doing the stuff above you? So if you are given, let's take the evaluation goal, you've got to get 10 of our case studies to be read per week. Well, that's wonderful. What's happening to drive interest in our case studies, to drive interest in our business? What's happening to create the awareness? Be aware of what's happening above you in the funnel. And it could be that you're responsible for all of it. Well, that's really good, because then you could say, well, actually, we know that to get 10 people to read our case studies per week, we need to get 100 views on this particular page of our website. We know that to get interest, we know that to get those 100 views, we have to reach 1,000 people and tell them about us. Think through the goals of the campaign and place them on this buyer's journey that Kotler and Thomas both so eloquently pulled together. You can't shortcut psychology. Once you've done that, we can start to pull things together, and we can start to think which promotional tools work well for your customers at this stage in the buying journey. Question 2, which tools are your target segments using? Now this will vary. We've got to know which tools work best for your customers as they move through the buyer's journey. I'm going to give some generic examples, but it's going to be different for every single one of your segments. They will use different tools at every stage. You've got to start considering things such as, where do they hang out? Oh, sorry, one thing I must say is you must know which segments you've been told to communicate with. I've taken that as a given, and then I popped that in thinking, actually, sometimes we're just given really woolly briefs, aren't we? Go and raise awareness. Great. Thanks. Who with? Which customers? Which segments? Could you be more specific, please? Because I do not have infinite marketing resource to communicate with everybody. So make sure you know exactly which segments. And then go to, hopefully your companies have developed customer avatars and customer profiles. Go and have a read of those. Get into these people's heads and find out, where do they hang out when they're most receptive to your messages? Who do they listen to with regards to the area, the business that your product or service you're trying to sell to them? What do they watch, read, listen to for information? What time of day? I sometimes think we forget about the time of day that they're most receptive to your messages, and how much resource, that's their time, their money, and attention. Attention is a resource which a lot of us are scarce in. Do they have to give to you about your service product? And all of these things will differ according to the stage of the buying process they are at. So let's take an example. Say that you want to reach professionals who are commuting from Fleet to London Waterloo. So first of all, what you want to do is you have been set an awareness goal. Well, you might think, right, they're commuting from Fleet to London Waterloo. Fleet has a large train station, and it has a train that takes 30 minutes to get directly into London Waterloo, and a lot of things at the side of London Waterloo tend to be government offices. Whitehall, you can get to Whitehall easily from Waterloo. So we want to reach these people with an awareness message. How much time have they got to give us for an awareness message? Probably seconds. Where do they go? Right, they're at Fleet Station every morning, stood there. Does Fleet Station have large advertising boards? It does. Right. What type of message can we put on that? We'll come on to that in a little bit. But we've got seconds to get over one or two things. That could be really good. Who do they listen to? So we've now got an evaluation thing where we want to get in front of people and get them reading our case studies. Let's take our professionals again that are going into London and they're working in the government sector. They listen to other civil servants. They might have their own media that they're reading. They might have their own magazines, their own newspapers, their own newsletters. Which are they? Who do they talk to? So who do we need to get in front of? different tools, different stage. You also have to think about who they're the who is a very interesting one, because often the people that we ask for awareness might be more general than the people further down the stage. So we might say, right, does anybody know a good solicitor in the area? Cast our net fairly wide. And then we might just go to one or two trusted people to choose our solicitor. So the chief executive of a business might ask an executive assistant or a senior manager, look, I found these 5 solicitor firms I think could draw up some of our commercial agreements. Could you go out and research them for me down to evaluation? So what I'm trying to get over here is that your customers are using different tools at each stage of the buying process. Chris Phil in 2006, he developed tables showing us the characteristic of promotional tools, which will also help you decide which tools to use. So if you want to deliver a personal message, which will be further down the buying process, that might be when people are considering or evaluating your company, your product or service, or considering a trial, then you wouldn't do it with advertising, would you? You wouldn't do a great big advert saying, thank you for your interest. Here is what we can offer you. That's when personal selling might come in really, really useful. However, if you've got an awareness target, advertising, which has its ability to reach a large audience, could be incredibly useful. Let's move on to question number 3 that you need to get the answers to. Which messages do you need to convey? Often this is a strategic, this has to come from the top. You need some guidance about, well, actually, we want to get over about this particular product. We've got a new product that we're launching. We really want to mention that this new product is the best in the market. We want to mention that our current product has this new feature. Actually, what we're doing is we're rewrapping things up, and our call to action is to our current clients. Did you know that we've been providing this fantastic IT support service to you for the last 5 years, but we also offer this? You've got to really nail down the messages that you have to convey. And then you've got to start thinking, how complex are these messages? So if you're talking about an upgrade or an update to a particular service that involves quite a bit of detail, then that might tell you which promotional tool that you're going to need. If you've got a really simple message, which is an awareness message perhaps, we exist and we do this, headline message, that's easily grasped. It's not complex, it's not that involved. Once you know what your messages are that you need to convey, how complex and how involved they are, you can start to look at the promotional tools that work well for your messages. Some examples here. Times Square, massive brand awareness raising going on there. Digital out of home is really good for that. It's also very good for engaging people's interest and imagination when it's used well and combined with motion and sound and visuals. Pile of newspapers. It could be that you say, actually, what we need to convey is we want to get over that we really know our stuff and we want to give really good information. So we're going to invest in PR, in that as a promotional tool, and get some really good, to get some journalists to write some really good things about us. Actually, we're at the point where we're trying to convince a big customer to use a brand new feature of one of our key products, and we need to go and talk to them about it. We need to do this face to face. We need to show them so that they can experience it. You can see how we can start to combine where we're at in the where you're targeting in the buying process, all the information about your customers, and then the messages you need to convey. We're slowly narrowing down the promotional tools that are going to work well for you. The next one, it's your marketing resource. Cut one's coat according to one's cloth. It's an English proverb, and it means to plan one's aims and activities in lines with one's resources and circumstances. My adaptation is choose your marketing tools according to your marketing resource. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you've been told, yeah. I remember once early on in my career, I used to work at Bristol. Yeah, go and book all of the hoardings at Bristol Temple Meads. Yeah, it's like they cost £1,000 for one day, and then we've got to get all of the or everything developed. So it's probably going to cost us £5,000. What's the budget? Oh, 10 grand a year. Right. So if you are going to cut and choose your marketing communication tools according to your marketing resource, this means you have to know what marketing resources are at your disposal. The 5 M's is a really good model that can be adapted to show you this. Money, what's the budget? And in a minute, we'll be looking at, when you look at the costs of promotional tools, there's more to it than just what it might cost to put something somewhere. How many minutes, how much time have you got to dedicate to this? How much time have you got to develop the concept? Some marketing tools take more time than others. It might be, do you have existing marketing materials that are ready to be used? Perhaps you might already have adverts laid out that you can tweak, graphic images, photos, copy that can be adapted and rewritten. How much time do you have until you're expected to deliver results? Some promotional tools deliver quicker results, and some promotional tools deliver results that can be measured better, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're delivering better results. You see the distinction? When you come to your budget, to your money, ask the questions: is that for the whole campaign, for one promotional tool, for 1 month, for 1 year? And then let's look at manpower. Who is going to do the marketing? Who's going to set all of this up? Who's going to manage it? Who's going to assess it? Who's going to be on hand if it goes wrong? Who's going to be the person sat there monitoring the social media feeds when you do your big launch and everybody hijacks your hashtag? And then machinery, things for this, such as, do you actually have the hardware and software to develop what each tool needs? I have come across fairly large companies who will book advertising space, and then go, oh, we'll do it in house. It's like, they need it in a particular format. Do you have that? Do you have that graphic design software? Oh no, oh no. Can't we just do it in PowerPoint? No, you can't. And if you don't have that capability, that hardware and software to develop what each promotional tool needs, can you buy it in? Can you rent it in? So get the answer to what marketing resource do I have at my disposal, and make sure they give you the full picture. And when we look at costs, let's go back to Chris Phil and his model. He talks about absolute costs. So that's everything involved. Mentioned the billboards outside Bristol Temple Meads. The costs there weren't just how much it cost to actually physically display things there. How much does it cost to get these massive giant posters printed? How much does it cost to get them designed? How much does it cost? Does the cost of putting them up there, does that include taking them up, putting them down? Got to look at all of the absolute costs. Direct marketing. I worked with a firm recently who hadn't taken into account the increased postage costs because they decided to move from flat mail to lumpy mail. Absolute cost. And then we can look at cost per contact. Well, advertising, the cost per contact is low because you're reaching thousands of people. With direct marketing, you're only reaching a few. But then you look at wastage, you have less wastage with direct marketing. It's going directly to the right, it should be going directly to the right type of people. But then we look at our investment, and again, this has to be tallied up with all of your resources. The size of investment for advertising can be really high. Lots of ways to assess your marketing resource and how effective it can be and how you should be using it. And do remember, cut your marketing clothes according to your cloth. Last one, number 5. What is the desired brand positioning that you have been asked to convey? Get the answer to this, and then look at, does the promotional tool you're choosing match your company's desired brand positioning? So let's look at a couple of examples here. So if you're a company that's innovative, energetic, open, new world, technology, social, then you're going to use promotional tools and communication tools that will reflect that. So that might be that you make good use of video. It might be that you have some funky cartoons drawn up. You're probably using some of the latest social media, particularly if your target audience are young people or energetic people or people in a technological environment. Let's move over to the other group. People, community, sustainable, energy, economic, building, development. I suspect they're not going to be jumping onto the latest social media technology. I think for their target market too, and for the way that they want to position themselves in people's minds, they're going to want to go for tried, for tested, for solid, for reasonable. I work with a firm of solicitors, and they very much need to choose promotional tools that match their desired brand positioning. And as solicitors, they want to come across as expert, calm, stable, certain. For them, using the latest tool, it doesn't fit their desired brand positioning. And finally, once you've gone through all this and you've got your answers to your strategic questions, which have narrowed down at each step of the way which promotional tools you are going to use and which are the best tools to use. Do have a little think about what it's all going to look like when it's in situ. Here are some examples. So, to conclude, when you have the answers to all of this, what are the goals of this campaign and plan? Where do they fit in with the buyer's journey, with your customer's buying journey? Which tools are your target customer segments using? And these tools will depend on where they are on the buying journey and where you're trying to reach them. Which messages do you have to convey? What have you been told or have you decided you need to convey? What is the resource available for you to execute your plan? And what is the desired brand positioning and which promotional tools match that brand positioning? Then you can choose the right marketing communication tools. So let's open the line to questions.
Thank you so much, Cara. Just to say, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat area and we'll do our best to answer them for you. To underline why you're writing some questions into the chat area, just let you know, those of you that registered for this, we will email you with a recording and a deck of slides. Those of you students with us, we will send, you will be able to access this recording and also the deck of slides on Oxcom Learning.
So Catherine's typed a question. How would you establish what channels people are using? Would you make educated guesses or carry out research? Some are fairly common sense, but some might be harder to identify. Research. So it depends on your budget, obviously, but it might be that you have to make educated guesses and then you have to go out to corroborate your educated guesses. So if you think, right, actually, we know that we are targeting an audience of white middle class males, age 50 plus, who live in the Guildford area. What do we think we're using? Well, we know that they all meet once a month at a particular event. We're pretty sure they don't use social media, but let's go and test that out. Let's go and check that out. So it has to be research. But one of the first things that I tend to do with clients, because a lot of my clients don't have the budget for big pieces of market research, is we pull their staff together and we say to their staff, right, in your experience, where are these customers hanging out? What are they using? And we ask them questions such as when they, so receptionists are brilliant at this because they'll say, oh yeah, they often phone up and go, yeah, we saw your advert in such and such. And that's a piece of market intelligence. So start with your team members, get them to think about one particular group, get some ideas with your educated guesses, and then go out and corroborate them with some targeted market research. Does that answer your question, Catherine? Let me go back to those 5 questions that might jog some thoughts. Red, was there anything that jumped out for you during the webinar that you thought might be
Apart from
useful to
the sheer
highlight
volume of
for the
tools and
students
everything else that
and
we
attendees?
have to choose from, I think for me, actually, it's the customer journey. For me, it's understanding where those customers are, what pain points they have at each part of that journey, or what they're trying to get out of each part of that journey, and then making sure your tools actually match that particular element. Um, of that journey. So, whether they are at the interest, you're driving awareness, or actually are you trying to drive trial? And it's thinking about where they are and actually what their needs are at that stage. To me, is one of the most important areas, and certainly I find in what I do from a digital perspective.
And do you find also, Red, because I find this with a lot of my clients, that as their buyers progress through that journey, they will give you more time and more attention. So you can use promotional
Yeah, I think
communication
so.
tools that are more
I
involved
think
and
it's
convey more
also, I think we talk
information.
about different tools, but I think messaging gets more and more important as well as the further down you almost get. So why should you act now? And I think I spent a lot of my time dealing with more out messages. There's a really interesting question here actually from Martin Clark saying, is there a promotional tool that's fallen out of favor with marketers? This is one of my favorites because I'm actually finding
Yeah,
that
that's
all the old favorites are
mm,
now coming round again. It's a really interesting article from, I think it was one of the mobile networks, who said digital's all well and good, but actually we found that our brand went to a completely another level when we started using TV advertising. There was also another companies that I'm seeing are now going back to direct mail, very simple direct mail. I know obviously GDPR and everything, but going if they've got access to a list that is GDPR compliant, they are finding, especially
yes.
local companies, that actually it's not all about Facebook. Simple direct mail is working really well for them. Anyway, I've talked more than enough. I'll let you carry on answering these questions.
Yeah. Now we've got some questions in. So Bethany, how would you help direct customers onto a new tool for your company, e.g. from print onto online email? Well, my first question would be, why are you doing that? And I suspect it's for cost. So you're doing it to suit your needs. So it's whether it suits their needs. So it could be that they want to use online and they want to use email, or that they're used to using it in other areas of their life. It depends on the segment, it depends on the profile. So some customer segments, whatever you do, they will not use online email. They will always, always, always want print. So I guess the first thing is, why are you doing it? If you know that actually they would be happy using online email and it's just the fact that your company's never offered them that option, then it's very much positioned as, we are doing this for your convenience. We'd like to, offer you the option so that you can get this straight into your inbox, so that you don't have to you don't have to be mucking about with paper. So have a think about why you're doing it. Does it actually benefit them? Do they actually want it? And we've got a question from Albert. How do you measure the, oh, sorry, I've just lost that. So I'm trying to scroll through them. Where's your question gone, Albert? How do you measure the effectiveness of your message? Well, you measure the effectiveness of your tool in many ways. So for each and every tool that you're doing, you've got to say, well, what's this going to do for me? So let me take one of the interest ones. In fact, I put some ideas of measurements in here. And this is why it's really important to break it down. So one of the things that drives me mad is when people say to me, right, we just want to increase sales by 10%. It's like, well, okay, let's break that down. What do you actually have to do to increase sales by 10%? That means that you've got to get 250 companies per quarter to take your 1 month free trial, one measurement. That means that we know that to get 250 companies to take our 1 month free trial, let's say 1,000 of them have to have downloaded our case studies. That means that for 1,000 of them to download our case studies, we know that to get that far, we need to get 5,000 people to read a particular page on our website. And we know that to make that happen, our awareness ratio is, for every 10 people that become aware of us, only one of them progresses through. So I'm trying to remember the figures I just gave you. So say it was 5,000 at interest. So that means we need to have 50,000 people become aware of us. So then when you're looking at figures like that, you can start to think, so how do we make ourselves aware to these 50,000 people? how many are in our segment. You've got to break it down like that. And then one way to obviously measure your pure effect, so there's not just what the so at every point when you're putting a message out, you're expecting somebody to do something, to engage with you in some way, so you can measure that level of engagement. What's really hard to measure is, did that message go in as you wanted it to go in? Did they understand it? And you can do that through some targeted research, through asking people when people phone up, and you can have questions that you can check with them. Or you wanted to buy widget A from us, but were you aware that we sold widget B? Did you see did you? And if they go no, and you've just run a campaign all about widget B, you kind of know that your campaign messages perhaps didn't really make it. Does that help, Albert? Simon, will the presentation have the reference of the expanded funnel? So do you mean this funnel? This is from a book called Watertight Marketing. If you give me 1 minute, I can wave in your direction. By Bryony Thomas. So, and when you get the slides, you'll see that the copyright is on there for you. And Catherine, I agree, we're going back to old favourite, it depends on the audience, but we're targeting IT professionals for whom it's unusual to receive direct mail, and so it makes more of an impression with them. Yeah, absolutely. One of my clients, they target head teachers, and they'd moved over to online, and they found that a few months later their sales dropped, and they realised that head teachers are just getting emails all the time, all the time, all the time. And what they actually really valued, because they offer training for teachers, was the ability to sit down with a well produced document. In fact, it's a really beautiful brochure. It's informative. It's got everything in there. It's got nothing in there that you can't find on the website, but it's got everything in one place, and they can sit down and look at it. And they've said, we've noticed now that when we go in to meet them to discuss their needs, they've often got that brochure of ours sat there, and you can see that it's been looked at, that it's been well thumbed. It might have notes on it, it might have sticky things in there. Sometimes it has a mug of tea sat on it. But I think there is that, where people are getting so inundated with their inboxes that actually physically having something in front of them that they can look at is a novelty. So yeah, it does make more of an impression with them. But I think this is where it goes back to thinking which tools work for your customers. Which ones do they want to have, and at what point of the buying process? I know, for example, that there are times when I really appreciate a well-written document putting everything out for me, but it's only when I'm ready. It's only when I'm almost at the point of purchase. If you just sent me, so that example in there actually is a letter that we received through the post, cold calling. It's just like, what's that all about? That tells me nothing. That's too long. I'm not just going to read that. You've kind of tried to use that as an awareness raiser. Too long, too long. Are there any other questions? No? Anything you want clarity about? You're thinking, oh, I'm not so sure what she meant there. Let me scroll down. Oh, I've scrolled down. Shira, hello. Are there any particular differences in the method that would be used for promoting an existing service versus an emerging service? I think it depends who it's to. So if it's an existing service to existing customers, then yes, it would be different than if it's an existing service. If it's an emerging service, sorry, so if it's an emerging service to existing customers, it would be different than if it was an emerging service to new customers, because for new customers, it's all completely and totally new. So it comes back to your audience. It comes back to, do they know you already? Do they know your company? Now, it might be that if you're trying to reposition yourself, so they've known you for selling toolbox A, you now sell toolbox B, and you really want to kind of get away from this reputation of doing toolbox A, then what you would have to do is you'd have to run a really strong communication campaign to get over that repositioning. So it depends on who it's for, who your audience is for, what you're trying to convey to them. Ellie, I work for a children's safeguarding charity and we have to be incredibly cautious about what we market and who we market to. What's your advice for marketing awareness of a company that's such a niche market? We don't have many competitors. So by awareness, do you mean that you want to raise awareness of what you do as a charity, or is it that you want to raise awareness that it's the first journey to people becoming donors? So I know that with charities, you've often got two audiences where you're trying to convince people to donate, but perhaps you're also trying to convince people that you should exist so then you can get more funding and so on and so forth. I think it's very much focus on the benefits that you bring. What are the benefits of your charity? What do you give? What do you give back to society? What do you give back to the community? And then you can do a little bit about how you do it. But yeah, you do have to be cautious about what you market and who to. I'm just reading your question again. It goes back to all of these questions, to be honest. It's like, what are the goals? Which tools are your target customer segments using? Knowing who your target customer segments are and knowing what you want from them. What do you want from them? What do you want from them? And what's the message you have to convey? And then and then one thing I think you'd have to be particularly aware of, Ellie, is that obviously there's what I think of as bleed, and that just because you're marketing to me doesn't mean that everybody else can't see it as well. So that's something to be very mindful of, particularly in your area. John, do you have any advice perhaps when some do's and don'ts? Oh, sorry, I've just lost your question, John. It's bumped down a bit. Do you have any advice, perhaps some do's and don'ts when trying to raise awareness via promotional activities? Think about your customers. The biggest mistake I see is people using self-reference criteria. I don't stand at Fleet Railway Station, so why do my customers? Well, they do. You've got to look at your customers. Go back to your customers. So when I first started in marketing, those of you who've been tutored by me will laugh because I have all of these stories from 20 years ago. But I remember that it was the long-standing joke that if you put your advert right outside the billboard on the CEO's drive into work, then he would consider you a marketing genius because he'd seen it every day. So obviously, if he'd seen it every day, everybody else had. Complete self-reference criteria. So I think the big thing, John, is sounds very harsh. You're not important. It's your customers that are important in this. It's the people you're trying to reach in this. You have to get inside their heads, get inside their world, and see and think about what media they're consuming, what tools they're using, and when and how and why. Jack, you say you have no main competitors in your charity venture. Do you not consider every other competitor? So that's a specific question for Ellie there. Yes, we do. So Iona, the customer opens our newsletter. They shows interest visiting our site too. What's the next step? Well, what do you want them to do, Iona? They've opened your newsletter. They've visited your site. What have you put out for them next? And this is your job as a marketer. Let's go back to this buying process. Your job, our jobs as marketers, is to make sure that we have the next steps in place for everybody. So if you're saying that you've got some interest things going on, what I would say you need to do is the next step is evaluation. Do you have something for them to read? Yeah, Jack, next step is an action with a clear CTA. So it might be read our case study, find out why we're great, read our testimonials, read our reviews. You can see that we're really good. Oh, look, this is how we helped Cara with her particular problem, which is probably similar to your problem. And now you've read that, why don't you buy one of our products? If you don't want to commit to buying the full £1,000 product, then what you can do is buy this smaller product. If you don't want to commit to using our piece of software straight away, why don't you have a 1 month free trial? Think about all of the different steps. And it is really important to think about each specific step, because what you don't want to do is give people too much too soon. Have you ever been in that place? It's like you see you're walking on the high street. Let's use a high street example, and you see a shop, and you think, oh, I'll pop in. That dress looks interesting. And the salesperson pounces and he goes, hello, how may I help? Oh, I saw you looking at the red dress. Would you also look at these red dresses? We've also got red tops. Whoa! What they've done is they've taken you from awareness and they're trying to push you into trial. And we do this in the business world too. I work, as I said, I work with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses. A lot of them are owner-run, and with small teams, and the teams are incredibly passionate and exciting about what they do. So when somebody says, "Oh, yeah, could I have your business card?" Great, you want my business card. So let me tell you all about this because we've just released a new piece of software. It's on 1 month free trial. If you do it like that, then if you give me this piece of the too much, too much. Think about the steps that you want to take your customers through. Think about the steps they're taking. Kotler nailed it. Human psychology. We don't rush into purchase decisions that are big purchase decisions. So then think, what's the next step? What do you need to give them to help them move through that buyer's journey? And don't overwhelm them. Any other questions?
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for today, Cara. It's been a really, really interesting webinar.
I'll bring it up.
And thank you all for attending. And we hope to see you on a webinar soon. As I say, we will email you the slides and a copy of the recording if you registered for it. Those of you who are students with the Oxford College of Marketing, you'll be able to access this through our online platform. So with that, just really left for me to say thank you very much for attending, and thank you once again to Cara.
Brilliant.